Eskom chairperson, Mpho Makwana, has resigned. Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan says he will officially step down at the end of the month. The current Eskom board member, Mteto Nyati, will take over the role at Eskom. Now, Makwana's exit comes weeks after the Public Enterprises Minister, Pravin Gordhan, rejected Eskom board's recommendation for a new CEO. Let's get some detail now as to what the way forward could possibly be, but more importantly, how the business community is digesting this. And we speak to the head of environment and energy at Business Unity South Africa, Happy Khambule. Mr. Khambule, thank you very much for your time. Can we start off with the reasons that were really not forthcoming in that very short statement from Public Enterprises? Is it correct to assume that the board chairperson, Mr. Makwana, and Minister Pravin Gordhan basically fell out on the back of that appointment of the CEO position?
Thank you for having me. And yeah, I think for now we can't speculate as to what the reasons are, but I think the biggest issue, and one of the key contributing factors for us to speculate in that realm, is that there was a very long period of time between when the recommendations were made up until some form of feedback and also round robin around what's happening on the CE's position. So I think that period of time between when the initial list was communicated that actually we're quite close to getting this thing done, which was the appointment of the chief executive, to now is a very long period. And you could have actually started to see that there was a testy relationship, at least in terms of how the responses were coming and the progress.
If we all agree, Mr. Khambule, that Eskom is the albatross around the South African economy and its proper functioning, surely something has got to give. Who do we place the blame at?
I mean, I think Eskom is not the only albatross, if you want to put it like that, but it is one of the bigger ones. And we need to be at least more frank that we do have system-wide failures as well as challenges that are occurring, not only in energy, but also in logistics as well as in crime, law and order areas. But in this case, I think the communication between the board, the leadership of Eskom, and the political principal being Minister Pravin Gordhan, that's where we need to actually ensure that the blame sits squarely in that relationship, that one of the key areas or KPIs that the board has been tasked to do was beginning to be implemented, but there was a delay, either from one side or the next. However, that particular component has not been addressed. And we're still sitting at this point in time without a substantive chief executive, and now we've got a new chairperson. And that does not give us stability nor the confidence that the actual roadmap that we are headed towards or that we are wanting to go towards is being implemented. But I must also say that the current new chair is someone who's seasoned and knows the inner workings and the key challenges of Eskom.
We'll talk about Mteto Nyati in a moment, sir. Let's focus the attention on a leaderless Eskom, a leaderless Transnet. We've seen the flurry of resignations there. What is the impact of a leaderless Eskom and Transnet at this time for the South African economy?
Well, the first thing is that we obviously don't have the kinds of confidence in the economy or the running of the key sectors as we normally would if we had a substantive leader. But I mean, we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because even in Eskom currently with the interim chief executive, there are people who are well astute, who are sound, and who actually understand the actual processes and problems that we're facing. So I think in the sense that is the utility still functioning, is the utility moving in the right direction? We've got indications, at least broadly, that yes, there are areas of improvement, and now we're just seeing this particular setback along the side of Transnet, which I think is a different case if we were to speak about the dynamics that led up to the resignation. However, it doesn't build the confidence that we need. But as long as the process is working towards fixing the structural issues, and I think that's what we need to focus on more than anything else, then we will begin to see a lot more improvement if the structural issues are being addressed. That the aspects of the leader, as you indicate, yes, they are quite dire. However, they just taking on or not necessarily contributing to the confidence that we need.
There was a time at the height of the Eskom crisis that we were assured by the president that his entire cabinet is on top of this situation, which is why we had the Minister of Electricity appointed, and that position previously having not existed. That was, in a way, to show just how important Eskom is. At a time like this, when we need for the economy to function, does it give you confidence as the business community that the cabinet of President Cyril Ramaphosa is indeed aware of the dire situation that our country is in economically? And why is it just, it goes quiet when something like this happens? Where do you sit as far as the government of this country and whether or not they are truly interested in the well-functioning of this economy?
Yeah, well, we think that broadly they're not interested, they're invested in the well-functioning of the economy. I think we've gotten used to a point where anything that occurs, even if it's operational or is, yes, important, but is not necessarily of a macro nature that we want ministers and presidents to spend on those particular areas. But everyone's got their role to play, and we should be giving enough people enough space. We need to give institutions the sphere in order to be able to implement and to do what they necessarily need to do. Specifically on the electricity issue is that we've got income. We had a state of disaster, which also led to the creation of the Ministry of Electricity, and we also have the key element, which is the Energy Action Plan, which was announced last year in July, which is the thing that we're driving towards in the short and midterm in order to address the electricity crisis. So we've got things in place. We just need to go through the process of implementation and allowing the space for people to be able to implement without providing undue pressure. However, again, this is a very contentious issue, and I agree with you that it might not look like our political principles are actually engaged, but for all accounts, they are engaged. They've tried to move different pieces and even move themselves into a situation where they are under emergency laws, which at later stage they recanted. So I think it's all about the implementation and whether or not the different social partners will be able to support government as well as hold them accountable on the basis of the targets that were set out in the Electricity Action Plan. On the basis of that, and when we see the system recover and the outlook get better, we can then talk about whether or not the structuring of whether it's cabinet, the executive, fits purpose in terms of the network industries and the service delivery and issues that we have. But right now we do have this short to medium-term interventions that need to be implemented regardless of whatever is happening outside, because this is the main plan and the most viable plan to saving us.
I'll tell you why I asked you that question, because it was to preface this one that comes now, and it is about Mr. Mteto Nyati. If you read that statement very carefully, it does not say that Mr. Mteto Nyati is going to come on an interim basis up until a permanent board chairperson is appointed. It basically seeks to say that he will be coming in as a permanent chairperson. Now, you've got to enlighten us about the process here, if you are any clear. And I'm saying this because the very length of time it has taken for Eskom to appoint a CEO is exactly on the basis of this, that the Minister of Public Enterprises said that the correct process was not followed here. The board gave him one candidate whom it said was the person who was appointable to the position of Group CEO. He said, in terms of process, 3 names ought to be given. Do we know what the process is of appointing a board chairperson, or can it simply be announced as we have seen in the statement yesterday?
Yeah, in terms of boards, it's always different, especially if your shareholder, in this case, is the state, because different boards do it in a variety of ways. In some cases, they would suggest a number of candidates, which will then go through another selection process, whether it's interviews or some version of distillation of who would be the right one or the preferred one. And then in some cases, the board does the whole process and then gives that recommendation. To be honest, I'm not necessarily sure what is the board process for Eskom. That's something that could be found out, but it seems to be more custom than it is something that's based on resolution or on what is contained in the board charter or in the memorandum of incorporation. Because even with the previous CE, Andre Director, we did not have, at least as the public, a view of who were the other names outside of obviously what was being leaked to the media. But when the eventual candidate was suggested, it was a name. It wasn't a bunch of people within a pool. So I would think that maybe the minister and the board probably had an agreement. If they didn't have an agreement, it was taken for that there is a common process which is that's being taken, but that's not general. It has to be something that is communicated. So that's something that we still need to find out. However, the fact that the new chairperson is coming in such a short period of time is a good sign. To the fact that there is a perception around the processes being lethargic and being slow. And in this case, because most people know Mr. Nyati, understand his qualifications as well as his experience, as well as the understanding of the situation, I think there's a lot more confidence in the fact that they acted with speed and that the vacancy has been quickly filled.
I'm completely out of time, but I can't resist this question, sir. Is it possible here? Is it possible that this is being done? I'm talking about the incoming chairperson. I don't think you and I can quibble about the capabilities of Mr. Mteto Nyati. But I think what is at the core of what Minister of Public Enterprise is trying to do here is to say there is stability at Eskom, and that's why he could not risk not having a permanent CEO nor a permanent chairperson of the board. Is that what he is trying to do here, to say there is stability at Eskom? Is that not pacifying us?
It could be to pacify us as a country, but it wouldn't be wrong to say that there is a measure of stability, because there is an internal group of people within its leadership that are capable of stepping up and taking the reins when it is necessary. And even in that circumstance, stakeholders, interested individuals would view those changes, at least in terms of the substantive appointment, as being credible. So I think in that way, whether it's to pacify us or to actually do real remedial action, it does actually address one of the key concerns that we tend to have around Eskom. The chief issue here is whether or not the board will still be allowed to do its work the way it's been doing its work, and that we will start to see those gains in the turnaround strategy for Eskom. So I think, in general, the minister might be acting with a plethora of considerations, but chief to this is that we need to have a leadership that is there, that is willing to go the whole way, and when it is allowed, to begin to take up the reins as appropriate.
Let me leave the conversation there. Happy Khambule, thank you very much for your time, sir.